Welcome back to the maintenance log. It's been a minute since I've posted something, so I just want to throw something kind of quick together. And this is a video essentially of why you shouldn't get into aviation. Honestly, I got a lot of reasons why you should, but this is more for people that are not sure if aviation is for them, if they're on the fence, if they're thinking about a career change and maybe they're not in aviation right now, but they're thinking about getting into aviation or something like that. This is going to be focusing mostly on the mechanic side of it. I did a previous video talking about the pay and the shortage of mechanics and all that stuff, but I've seen a lot of questions that come up with new mechanics or people thinking about being a mechanic, and a lot of questions on Reddit, a lot of questions on Facebook, all that stuff. So I just want to kind of go over a lot of the more common questions that a lot of people have, and a lot of the questions that I had whenever I was kind of trying to figure life out. That was a ways back. Anywho, I guess the best part to get started with is, where do you even get started, right? You have a lot of conflicting ideas. A lot of people are going to go either military, or they're going to go to a trade school, or they're going to just try to do on-the-job training. All of them, great choices. And obviously, going military is never really a bad idea. I fully support that for any career choice. Even if you don't even know what you want to do, that's always a solid starting point. You can do a lot with that. But specifically for the civilian side, I would strongly recommend starting out with seeing if you can volunteer your time at a repair station, or even just go to a small airport near you. Try to find some guy that's working on his plane some weekend and just ask him about it, talk to him about it, maybe help him change a tire, help him change the oil, help him do some minor maintenance tasks, learn to time a magneto or something, just to see if that's something that you do like. Then from there, I also really support going to a tech school for it. It's shorter because it's only 18 months for the FAA regulations. It's only 18 months of schooling. And once you get done, you already have all of the information you need to know in order to get your certifications, to go take your written exam, go take your oral and practical, and get your certification. So tech schools are great. Some are kind of better than others, but really, at the end of the day, they all teach essentially the same stuff. They're just teaching you how to get your A&P. So there's a lot of hype around certain schools. I went to Spartan College in Tulsa, and I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was a really thorough program while I was there. The instructors were great. Majority of the students I went there with were pretty great. It was a really good tech school overall. Now, they're really pricey, and looking back at it, I probably would have gone somewhere cheaper if I could have done everything all over again. But I don't regret it. Tech school's a great starting point. You'll meet a lot of instructors that you just kind of click with, and they'll open up different networking opportunities for you. They'll open up different projects and stuff. Sometimes they might even have a little airplane that they're working on themselves, and you can come in after hours and kind of learn real aviation. Because the thing is that tech school, you're going to have some worn out aircraft. Like, everything is worn through, and it's not a real representation of what you're going to face whenever you get out into the real world. All of the tools are kind of worn out. Like, just it's you have a lot of kids going through there. You have a lot of people, turning wrenches on the exact same motors, on the exact same airframes, and everything is just, everything's blown out. So it gets you familiar with it, but it doesn't teach you everything you need to know. On the job training is longer than tech school, but you start out kind of making money right off the bat. And if you're going to go on the job training, which is also a great choice, you could go work for a larger MRO, like a maintenance, repair, overhaul. You go work for somebody like that. In Oklahoma City, the big one would be AAR. You go work for them under their repair station certificate. You get your experience, you build up, you go get your A&P, and then you're off to the races. You can, use that experience to transition over to trying to get into the airlines, whatever you want to do. Build a career from that point. Which brings up an interesting question, because some people ask, they might be really interested in aviation, and so they want to know whether or not you even need an A&P. Because you can absolutely work on airplanes in the right circumstances without an A&P. One avenue you can travel is if you live near like a military installation that does depot level maintenance, similar to Tinker Air Force Base. You can get on with the civil service, and a lot of times you don't need an A&P to go work on aircraft or aircraft assemblies or whatever for the military, and they pay really well. Currently, the top out for a regular mechanic would be, they should be a WG11 in most cases, unless you're in avionics, but let's just go with like a WG11 step 5. They're making $35 an hour right now. So solid pay. It might take you a few years to get to that point, but still solid pay. But either way, the other way you can go on with that is, like I said, the MRO, and you'll start out making a lot less, but you can make it work. But you're going to be capped, and all of your experience will stay with wherever you last left. So it's not I don't see it as a great long-term strategy to go without an A&P. It doesn't make sense. If you want to be in aviation, just get the certifications that are required for what it is in aviation you're going to do. It makes the most sense. Get the training, get the experience, and keep that experience by just getting your A&P. But short answer, if all you want to do is work on airplanes, you don't need an A&P to go and work with somebody to work on airplanes. But you won't have the same privileges, and you won't have the same career trajectory as somebody with an A&P. And you're probably not going to make as much money as somebody with an A&P if you don't have one. And kind of rolling with that is, not everybody has the same starting point, right? So some people might be coming into aviation, coming into the maintenance side of things after they've already had a career. They want to transition from being automotive to being aviation mechanic, or maybe they want a complete 180 shift, and they've been working offices and now they want to turn wrenches. Totally fine. And I think you could easily get into it at any stage in life. I've seen people pretty much of every age category you can kind of put or think of is represented. So I don't think it's something that, you definitely have to get into when you're younger. You'll just be essentially doing different things. When you're young, you're probably going to have a harder time, or not really a harder time, but you'll be doing some of the more challenging jobs that the more experienced mechanics don't necessarily want to do. For instance, if you're working on MD-80s, if you're a young guy starting out, the older mechanic you're working with, if you got to pull the engines off, they're probably going to send that young guy up there to struggle with that bolt and everything up there. It makes the most sense. Also, if you're a younger guy and you're working on older 737s, they're going to send that younger guy up into the hellhole, which is in the very back section, to climb up on top of everything in the back and reach through to pull that upper APU shroud off. It's a horrible job. It's horrible. Nobody wants to do it. But when it comes down to it, the young new mechanic is eager to do it. And, the older guys that have been doing it for a while, they're not going to fight you for it. But if you are older and, you're, not as limber as you once were, nobody's going to go make you do that job. They're not gonna put you in that spot because, well, they already know you're probably not the most flexible, and you're also probably not the most eager to go do these ridiculous jobs. You're not going to be shoved into positions where it really doesn't make sense, is what I'm trying to get at. But absolutely, you can. I think anybody who's on the fence, anybody who's thinking about a career change, go for it. Just use some of these examples I've talked about and start somewhere. Just go talk to a guy. I worked at a shop one time, and there was a firefighter that just was looking for extra cash, and he happened to be driving past the airport and thought, wow, that looks cool. So he went and talked to a sheet metal shop, and they just let him on part-time, and they taught him how to do all the sheet metal. And he's not licensed, but he's making decent money, and since then he's retired from being a firefighter. But either way, it worked out really well. Now he's working on airplanes. He likes what he does. Everything's going smooth, and he didn't have to go through schooling and all that. And I think he was in his, I want to say he was like 40 something whenever he got into aviation to start with. So, I mean, that's not late at all. That's pretty young, full spectrum considered. But, and then, there's a million ways to get experience. Everybody wonders, well, how do I get experience when no jobs will hire me without experience? Well, just like I talked about, you just have to find somewhere to start. Somewhere somebody is willing to pay you for your time, or somebody is willing to let you come learn on their aircraft or at their shop or whatever. You just have to be really proactive about it. If for whatever reason you're in a market that doesn't have a lot of aviation jobs available. But if you look hard enough, I guarantee you'll find an A&P community or some kind of aviation community that you can get started with. Because really, we're everywhere. But we kind of blew through that section. We talked about schooling as one of the entry points. I know there's a lot of questions for people that are already kind of thinking about this and they want to go to the schooling. There's a lot of, I guess, curiosity, what the daily schedule looks like, how hard is everything, and, just normal questions. But essentially, it's very structured because everything's outlined by the number of hours you got to be in the class, and all that's all set in stone by the FAA. So you'll just go to class, you'll take your notes from whatever hour they start. In my case, I think we started at 7. We started at 7 and got out at like 2 o'clock, something like that. Anyway, so you start when class starts and you end when class ends. They've got a very strict, almost feels like a job kind of thing, because if you miss a certain number of hours, you got to retake the class. So, it's pretty structured, and you just kind of half and half, hands-on and theory combined. The way they did it at my A&P school at Spartan, you started out in the morning before lunch. You did all of your note taking and all of your theory and everything. And then the second half of the day, you went out to the shop and essentially applied what you learned. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, where you're not stuck inside just, hand jamming notes. But as far as difficulty, it's as difficult as you make it. If you're really putting in the work to learn the subject, it won't be that difficult. It's really common sense. Most of it's really common sense, and most of it is easily processed, I would say. And even for people that don't have like mechanical backgrounds, I know when I went to A&P school, there was a kid. We went through the whole program together, and he's a really great guy, but he said it himself all the time. He's like, "Oh man, I'm not a mechanic. I've never turned wrenches on anything. I barely changed my own oil on my car." And he did just fine. He was I don't know, I think he made like 95 was like his lowest grade. The dude was great academically, and he did great on all the projects. He got out of school, went and worked for a helicopter company out in I think he was out in Vegas, and then at some point he became a contractor, went overseas, was working in Abu Dhabi for a while, and then he just built a whole career off of that. And I mean, everything worked out really well for him as far as I know. But yeah, I mean, you go from zero to adequate in 18 months, and then it's personal effort after that. But that's pretty much all there is to it. I mean, it's just normal school. I mean, everybody's been to some form of schooling. It's just that, but it's only aviation. It's only about one topic for the most part, and I didn't find it super challenging. When you get to the testing, the written, there's a test bank, there's a question bank that you can look at. It's all published through the FAA. You can look at all of the questions, learn all of the answers. It's like 1,000 questions, 1,000 answers. And then when you take the written test, it's only 100 questions. So you just go through it, you learn all the concepts, you learn all the answers the way that the FAA wants to see it written out on the test. You take your written test. Then afterwards, you just go take your oral and practical with your designated mechanic examiner at DME. And that is all open book. So, you're using a manual. It tells you how to do things, remove the prop, install the prop. It's got to be marked at this location, whatever, torque the bolts to this, whatever. That's all the practical stuff. They'll have you do some safety wire. You'll do some sheet metal stuff. It's all pretty straightforward. Then you do the oral side of it, which is just you sit down with your DME and they ask you a bunch of questions. You answer all the questions and explain it the best you can. And usually if you've got the big picture concepts down, then you should be good. There are some questions that require a very specific answer, and you'll know about that when you talk to your DME. You can always sit down and do a practice O&P with your DME to find your weak points and kind of figure out what you need to work on to make sure you pass your exam. And again, most people, they work really, really well with you, and everybody's kind of here to help everybody. At least that's been my experience. Then a lot of other questions is going in another direction is, I'm sure a lot of people are asking, well, what's the money like? What jobs are available, and lifestyle? And well, I made a whole nother video about that, as how to make $120,000 a year as an aircraft mechanic. Kind of touches on most of that, but briefly, the pay is decent. The pay is above average in most areas. It's above average. The benefit packages that you get most places are decent. You're not going to be, Jeff Bezos, but you're definitely not going to be, living in a van down by the river. I mean, unless you want to, which kind of nowadays sounds pretty cool. But there's always going to be work for you. If you're a good mechanic, there will always be work. Heck, even if you're not a great mechanic, I've met some really wild people in my time in aviation, and I cannot believe that they had careers in aviation. Just some of the people you meet, especially like the contractors and stuff, you'll come across some contractors that you're just blown away with how they operate. But that's a whole different story. But again, if you want to know more about the lifestyle, want to know more about the job opportunities, the different pathways, I got another video, how to make $120K a year as a mechanic. So it comes down to the pros and cons. So like I originally set out, reasons you shouldn't get into aviation. One, super stressful environment a lot of the time. Not so much like you're on a battlefield or anything like that, like you're going to die or anything like that, but you are in an environment where what you do really matters. It's, specific tasks that you may be on. If you're rigging flight controls, or you're, rigging the throttle linkage or anything like that, even if you're just, doing weight and balance, which doesn't sound super critical, but if you do it wrong, it throws off the whole aerodynamics of the aircraft, and lives are at stake. People do die. I mean, just recently, I don't place this on the mechanic, but it has happened in the past where it has been a mechanic's fault. But there was an incident with the UPS aircraft. The engine ripped itself off the wing, and I believe a couple people died. I don't know all the details. I just saw the headline, so excuse me if I got some of that wrong. But the engine ripped itself off the wing and the plane crashed. It wasn't a good day. But a similar event like that on the same airframe happened, and it ended up kind of being mechanical failure, and it's something super small that they just overlooked. They just didn't think about, it wasn't gross negligence or anything like that. They just genuinely didn't think about it, and it resulted in fatalities. There are multiple incidents that mechanics have done things because they're tired or stressed or whatever the case is, and it has led to accidents, and people have been injured. People have been, occasionally killed. So there is a baseline level of stress that you just have to learn to live with, and learn to work through. Obviously, during certain times of the year, there's more stress to get planes out. You got to get this out, got to get this out, got to deliver. Usually, the shop you're in will try to minimize that kind of pressure on you. And for your self-regulation, you shouldn't allow production numbers to stress you out anyway. Because it's maintenance. Things go sideways sometimes, just do your best with the tools and information that you've got and the equipment that you've got. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. Sometimes you miss a deadline. It happens in maintenance all the time. Stuff just goes sideways, and you're like, well, we're not going to meet that deadline. Sorry. We just got it. We have to do this right. It's not an industry you can cut corners in. And so there is a good amount of stress. Next thing, it's a big one. Exposure. So you shouldn't get into aviation if you don't want to work outside, if you don't want to work in uncomfortable positions or uncomfortable temperatures. or if you never ever want to come into contact with harsh chemicals. Now, things are very moderate. They're, moderated and stuff. So I mean, you're not routinely coming into contact with harsh chemicals directly on your skin, unless you're just not wearing your PPE and all that stuff. If you're not taking steps to avoid it, it's going to happen, and then long term you'll see consequences and effects of that. But as far as temperatures and stuff, I mean, it's unpredictable, because if you're in a big aircraft hangar, I almost said carrier, but if you're in a big aircraft hangar and they have to do APU runs, then they have to take the tail of the aircraft and stick it outside the hangars so they can run the APU. Everybody else inside the hangar is still working. So you might still be, I don't know, doing interior work, or maybe you're doing something in the landing gear, maybe whatever, obviously it's not going to be on jacks, but the point is you'll still be working, and it'll still be outside, and it's still going to be cold in the winter, still going to be hot in the summer. And there was one time I was working on a 737, and the whole aircraft was out on the ramp, and I had to do a cabin entry door actuator, and the thing was just fighting me. But during that time, it was actively freezing rain, and I built up about a half layer of ice on my back, and it was just horrible. It was terrible. I barely felt my fingers the whole time, but got the job done, warmed up, and it overall it was a pretty good work day. But at the other extreme, I've been in the tail section trying to, like I said, on an older 737, trying to get that upper APU shroud off, and the doors are open and the sun's coming in, and it's just baking me. I just felt like I was in a literal oven. It is horrible. I had to keep coming out like every 5-10 minutes, something like that. I had to keep crawling out just to feel some form of breeze, and all of my clothes soaked through. It was terrible, but you get the job done, and then you get to think about it, and once the plane flies off and everything's done, it's actually kind of a fulfilling experience. Other downside is time off. It can be really hard to get time off in certain shops and stuff. A lot of people are getting better at it, but if you want time off, like in the summer, if you're working at a big MRO, probably not going to happen very often, because that's when maintenance is the heaviest for commercial aircraft and, like the airliners and stuff, because most of the traveling for airlines is happening in the winter, around Christmas, Thanksgiving, that stuff. So they want all of their maintenance done whenever they're not flying, because every minute that the plane's on the ground, they're not making money, and they want to recoup that loss by, making sure they have it in the air during prime flying season, prime travel season. So during busy season, it might be hard to make sure you have time off. And then the other side of it is, during slow season, you might be begging for work and having to go to different shops and stuff, depending on what your work cycle's like. So it might be a challenge to keep steady work, or you may have to travel for work to be able to make that work for you. And then the biggest thing I think will throw people way off is the hours fluctuate. Some jobs, like airlines and civil service, like I said, pretty standard. You come in, you clock out, that's it. But if you're working in what I'd say like the real maintenance side of things, where you're working in MROs or FBO or something like that, you might get in there and start working, and well, you're on this job until you finish this task. So if You know, if you're rigging the thrust reversers on, you know, on a jet and it's just fighting you and things aren't lining up and, you know, whatever, you just can't get it dialed in, well, you're probably going to be stuck on that until it's done and then you can leave. I've gone in at the beginning of my shift planning, you know, just, oh, this is going to be an 8-hour shift. You know, I'll be home, and I had things planned with my wife and everything at the end of the day. Well, I had a text her, hey, I'm not going to be coming home today because I'm not going to be coming home on time because I've got this and this and this. I've got to get it done today. And I ended up working 16 hours straight, you know, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. But those are the big things to think about why not to be a mechanic if those are all deal breakers. But the pros of it is, like I said in that other video, make 120K as a mechanic. You get free travel if you work for the airlines. You fly anywhere, they fly for free. So that's great. And the pay is pretty good. The benefits, pretty decent. You'll meet some pretty awesome people. And a lot of people with a wide range of experience and hobbies and stuff. And you end up bumping into, I don't know, in my opinion, some of the coolest people you could possibly meet. And you know, if celebrities are like in your, you know, if you're interested in meeting celebrities in certain areas of aviation, you can meet them. Usually like FBOs and stuff where they're flying private jets out of, you meet occasional celebrities. I don't really care about that because they're just regular people with, you know, great PR people for them. So they could be horrendous, but you think they're cool because you watch their movies or whatever. But anyway, that's all I've got. So if any of this sounds like something that you can do, want to do, or are interested in, I highly recommend it. You know, if you have any further questions, drop a comment, you know, reach out to me any way that you want to, and I could try and give you some more information on it. There'll be more videos to come going over the same stuff, but that's pretty much everything. Hopefully you found this entertaining. Take it easy.